When you hear the word idol, you probably think of a statue people bow down to thousands of years ago. So as a Christian, it's easy to think, I don't worship idols. But idolatry didn't disappear. The idols just changed. And some of the easiest things to turn into idols are actually good things. Because the danger isn't always the thing itself. It's the place you give it in your life. So here are 5 idols Christian men still worship today without even realizing it. But before we get into them, we need to understand what actually makes something an idol. Because an idol isn't simply something bad. Romans 1 verse 25 says, people worship and serve created things rather than the creator. Notice the difference. Created things instead of the creator. And this clearly goes beyond physically bowing down to a statue. Because in Colossians 3 verse 5, Paul actually describes greed as idolatry. So when I call something an idol in this video, I'm not saying that thing is automatically bad. I'm talking about a created thing taking a place in your life that belongs to God. That's what makes this idol so easy to miss. The problem isn't always what you are pursuing. It's what you are expecting that pursuit to give you. Because every idol makes a promise. If I can just get this, then I'll finally be okay. And pay close attention to the last idol because it can actually look like you're becoming a better man. But let's start with the first idol. Success. Now, wanting to be successful isn't the problem. There's nothing wrong with wanting to build something, accomplish something meaningful, or become excellent at what you do. The problem is what success can start to mean to you. Because for some of us, success quietly makes a promise. If I accomplish enough, then I'll finally be somebody. And that's when success stops being something you pursue and starts becoming something you use to prove your worth. You start measuring yourself by the results, how much you've accomplished, how far ahead you are, whether people respect you, whether your life looks impressive. And eventually, failure doesn't just mean something I tried didn't work. It starts to mean maybe I'm not enough. That's why this can be so difficult to recognize. From the outside, it can look like ambition, but underneath it can be a desperate need to prove that your life matters. So here's a question. If nobody ever knew what you accomplished, would it still be something worth accomplishing? Or here is an even harder question. If God gave you a faithful life that looked unimpressive to everyone else, would that feel like failure? Because God's definition of a life well lived isn't necessarily the same as the world's definition of success. Jesus tells a parable in Matthew 25 where servants are entrusted with different amounts. And the master's approval isn't well done, good and successful servant. It's well done, good and faithful servant. The goal isn't to stop being ambitious. It's to stop needing achievement to tell you who you are. Pursue excellence, build things, develop what God has entrusted to you. But let faithfulness determine whether you are succeeding, not whether your life looks impressive to everyone else. Because success isn't the only thing that can promise you will finally be okay. Sometimes we put our trust in something much more tangible, which is money. And just like success, having money isn't the problem. Money can help you provide for your family, be generous, prepare for the future, and meet real needs. But money can quietly make a promise. If I can just have enough, then I'll finally be secure. Enough to quit that job, enough to never worry about bills, enough that if something goes wrong, you'll be okay. And that's where money can become more than just a tool. It can become the thing you are trusting to take care of you. Jesus gives a warning about this in Luke 12. A rich man's land produces so much that he doesn't have enough room to store everything. So he decides to build bigger barns. And once he has enough stored away for years, he essentially tells himself, now I can relax. I'm set. But that very night, his life is required of him. He had enough money for years, but he didn't have another day. That's the limitation of the security money promises. Money can solve real problems, but it cannot guarantee tomorrow. And there's another version of this that's especially easy for ambitious Christian men to justify. Once I have enough money, then I'll be able to serve God. Once the business works, once I'm financially free, once I have enough to give, then I will have time for God. But notice what has happened. Faithfulness to God has been postponed until you reach a financial destination God never told you to reach before you could obey Him. And it can even go further. You can start seeking God because you believe seeking God will help you get the money you actually want. Now, in your mind, you are putting God first. But deep down, money is still what you are pursuing. Jesus says in Matthew 6 verse 24, you cannot serve both God and money. So maybe the question isn't simply, Do I want more money? Ask, what am I expecting money to do for me? And am I using money to serve God? Or am I using God to get money? The answer isn't to stop earning, stop saving, or stop building wealth. It's to put money back in its proper place. A tool you steward, not a God you trust. And money isn't the only good thing we can expect to finally make us whole. Sometimes we put that expectation on another person. But before we get into that, if you've gotten value from this video so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this. The third idol is relationships. Now, wanting a relationship isn't the problem. There's nothing wrong with wanting a wife, praying for one, or preparing yourself for marriage. The problem is when you start expecting a relationship to give you something it was never meant to give you. Because relationships can make their own promise. Once I find the right person, then I'll finally be complete. Maybe you think, once I have a girlfriend, I won't feel so lonely. Once a woman chooses me, I'll finally feel wanted. And without realizing it, you can start building your happiness, your worth, even your identity around a person you haven't even met yet. That's important because you don't actually have to possess something to make an idol out of it. You can spend years thinking, once I finally get married, and mentally put your real life on hold until then. I'll become more responsible when I have a family. I'll become the man I need to be when I have a wife to lead. I'll finally be happy when I have someone beside me. But marriage isn't the starting line for becoming a godly man. You can become faithful now. You can become responsible now. You can serve God now. You can build meaningful relationships now. And there's another test that can reveal just how important a relationship has become to you. What would you compromise to get it or keep it? Because it's easy to say God comes first when nothing you deeply want is competing with Him. But when you meet someone you really don't want to lose, and suddenly the boundaries you had start becoming negotiable, red flags become easier to excuse, convictions become easier to compromise, and that's when you have to ask, do I want this person? Or do I need this person so badly that I'm willing to disobey God to keep them? Jesus says in Matthew 10 verse 37 that even our closest human relationships cannot take priority over Him. That's not because relationships are bad. It's because they were never meant to be God. So if you are single, don't pretend you don't want marriage. You can genuinely desire it, but ask yourself, what am I expecting marriage to fix? My loneliness, my insecurity, my lack of purpose, my need to feel wanted. Because a wife can be a gift from God, but she was never designed to carry the weight of becoming your source of worth, identity, and fulfillment. So don't stop wanting the gift. Just don't want the gift more than the giver. And the next idol is even easier to justify because pursuing it can look like nothing more than taking care of yourself, which is your body. Now, of course, taking care of your body isn't wrong. Training, eating well, getting stronger, taking care of how you look. These can all be good things. In fact, 1 Timothy 4 verse 8 says, physical training has some value. But notice what Paul does immediately after that. He says godliness has value for both this life and the life to come. So the issue isn't whether your body has value. It's whether you've given it more value than it deserves. Because your physique can start making its own promise. If I finally look good enough, then I'll finally feel valuable. So you start training, you get bigger, you get leaner, you look better than you did a year ago. But somehow, it's still not enough. Because now your arms could be bigger, your shoulders could be wider, you could even be leaner. And there's always another guy online who looks better than you. So the finish line keeps moving. And what started as improving your body can slowly become needing your body to prove your worth. That's when the mirror becomes more than a mirror. A good day in the mirror becomes a good day for your confidence. A bad day in the mirror can change how you feel about yourself. Attention from women makes you feel more valuable. Respect from other men makes you feel like you are finally becoming somebody. And that's worth paying attention to because God doesn't evaluate you using the same scoreboard. When Samuel looked at Eliab in 1 Samuel 16, he was impressed by what he saw, but God told him, people look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. That doesn't mean your appearance doesn't matter at all. It means you can spend years developing something people admire on the outside, while neglecting the person you are becoming on the inside. So here's the question. Are you more intentional about building your body than building your character. Not in terms of how many minutes you spend doing each, but in terms of what consumes your attention. Which leads to an even harder question. Who would you be if you lost the body you built? An injury could take away your ability to train. Age will eventually change how you look. Your body was never something you could keep forever. So if losing your physique feels like losing yourself, you've probably attached more of your identity to it than you realized. Now, the answer isn't to stop training. Just don't build your identity on your body. Don't spend so much time building something temporary that you neglect the character you are taking into eternity. And if you thought that one was difficult to recognize, the last idol is even harder because it can hide inside your discipline, your ambition, and even your desire to become a better man. The last idol is you. And this one is especially dangerous because it can look like you are doing everything right. You're becoming more disciplined. You're working harder. You're improving yourself. Maybe you're even praying more, reading your Bible more, and trying to become a better Christian. None of these things are bad. But here's the question. Who is all of this ultimately for? Because self-improvement can quietly become self-worship. You create this ideal version of yourself in your head. Successful, wealthy, disciplined, attractive, married, and then your entire life becomes a project to turn yourself into that man. Even God can get pulled into the project. You pray because you want Him to help your plans work. You seek God because you believe He will help you get the life you want. And from the outside, that can look like you're putting God first. But God can be first in your routine without being first in your heart. Because if God is primarily the person you are using to get somewhere else, then God isn't really the destination. And remember what Jesus says in Matthew 16. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Christianity isn't, here's the life I've decided I want. God, help me build it. It's, God, my life belongs to you. Where you lead, I'll follow. And that's where this idol gets tested. Because it's easy to follow God when God seems to be taking you exactly where you already want to go. But what happens when He doesn't? What if obedience costs you an opportunity? What if God's timing doesn't match yours? What if the life of faithfulness in front of you looks different from the life you've spent years imagining? Would you still follow Him? That's why one of the most revealing questions you can ask yourself is this. Am I asking God to lead my life? Or am I just asking Him to bless my plans? And here's a practical way to test that. Write down the man you are trying to become. What makes the list? Wealthy, muscular, successful, confident, married, influential. Again, none of these things are automatically wrong. But what else could be on that list? Faithful, loving, humble, patient, generous, self-controlled, Christ-like. Because there's nothing wrong with becoming a better version of yourself, as long as your definition of better is being shaped by God more than it's being shaped by the world. So keep growing, keep becoming disciplined, keep developing what God has given you. But don't turn yourself into the God all of that growth is ultimately serving. So maybe the final question to ask yourself is, if God asks me to surrender this, would I? Because the goal isn't to stop wanting good things. It's to stop asking good things to take the place of God. And idolatry isn't the only trap that's easy for Christian men to fall into without realizing it. Some of the greatest men in the Bible fell into traps we are still falling into today. So if you want to know what those are, watch this video next. Remember, the path is yours to walk. And as always, I'm in your corner, rooting for you.